Hi everyone, I'm Gary Knoll. We're in New York City and we have collected from all over the country some of the finest minds in medicine. These are board-certified physicians who specialize in helping people understand the food-mood connection.
Just because you're a certain age doesn't mean you have to be sick.
Can I work with a patient long term and prevent diseases?
These are the food from which the brain will manufacture serotonin, and often people are very deficient.
We spike ourselves with counterfeit energies to keep moving continuously like machines through the day.
Well-being and wholeness is a different consciousness.
Think of all the people in America today that suffer from depression and anxiety disorder. How about addictive behavior? If we are anything, we have addictive behaviors, whether it's to coffee or to sugar or to gambling or to drugs or alcohol or just overworking. Think of how many children have been diagnosed with ADD and ADHD or are simply hyperactive. How many Americans can't get a good night's sleep, suffering from insomnia? How about brain fog or brain fatigue? For those of you who have Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia, forgetfulness, you're starting to forget things, and that might be in your 30s or certainly by your 40s. Someone's last name, the title of a movie you saw. You forget what you just read in a book. You might have brain fog. You might have brain fatigue, where you just don't have the mental energy any longer. Well, Dr. Eric Braverman is the person to call. In addition, we're a very addicted nation. We have all kinds of addictions. And lately, we've been seeing a lot of people in the headlines who are acting out, a lot of aggression. What can you tell us about all this?
Okay. First thing we need to know is you lose not just memory, but you lose attention and quickness. In fact, we have 50,000 accidents a year because people have brain aging and they're losing their ability to drive, ski, handle a lawnmower, handle fire in their house, handle a gun. And these are all related to attention, personality problems, memory loss, and brain quickness. So let me tell you about the brain specifically. There are 4 core chemicals that run the brain. One is the energy group called dopamine, and it can basically give you fire, or what we call metabolism. And when it goes down, you get obesity as you age, you get addictive disorders as you age, you get depression, you get the inability to have high energy. You can't write a book at 7 years old. You can't go to medical school at 7 years old unless you learn the technique to raise the energy of the brain. Number 2, your brain slows down. It loses an important chemical called acetylcholine. As it slows down, you start to drop the balls of memory. You can't remember your cell phone numbers. You can't remember the names of people, faces of people. You can't concentrate in the same manner. You don't just get dementia, you get attention failure, you get addictive behavior because you're trying to keep your brain sharp, so you start to eat carbs, sugar, salt, fats, and you start to basically be desperate to feed your brain that's losing its edge. Third core chemical is what we call Gaba, the brain's Valium. And many individuals get anxiety. They can't sleep as they get older. They get anxious as they get older. They get hooked on drugs from Xanax to marijuana to alcohol. And they self-medicate this chronic state of anxiety to sleep and to stay calm. And the fourth way the brain ages is it loses serotonin. And so you can't sleep. Once you can't sleep, you get more metabolic syndrome. Your immune system goes out of balance. You get more autoimmune diseases from thyroid to adrenal problems. And so sleep becomes a cornerstone dimension of mood, anxiety, and fighting all the neurodegenerative diseases from Alzheimer's to Parkinson's.
Now, I don't know about any of the rest of you, but the people I see, many of the men over the age of 45, they say they're suffering not just from a depression, but from an emotional detachment, meaning they no longer feel connected to the things in life that once gave them passion and pleasure. And they don't realize there's something biochemical. It's called free testosterone. And instead of rebalancing their hormones, the things that all of you do, because you all help people rebalance their hormones naturally, they say, take some pregnant mare's urine. Like somehow the urine from a horse, a mare, is going to be identical to your natural estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. It isn't. In fact, every study that I have seen, and I've been against this for 35 years, that synthetic hormone replacement therapy increases a woman's risk of heart attacks, stroke, breast cancer, ovarian cancer, and dementia. Now, there are about 10 million women right now taking synthetic hormone replacement therapy. There's at least a 13% adverse effect rate. That's 13%. That's 1.3 million American women could end up with a heart attack or a stroke or breast cancer and never know that it came from that synthetic hormone replacement therapy. So he's going to show us about bioidentical or natural hormone replacement, and with that comes an elevated mood and everything else. Weight starts to come down, more energy, better skin, better hair, no more hot flashes, remineralization of the bone.
So we know when you lose dopamine, depending on your receptors, and one person gets Parkinson's, but most people, they get obesity. Most people get fatigue, depression. Dopamine, or your amphetamine in the brain, comes from nutrients in your food. It's an amazing thing, but the amphetamines and stimulants of your brain come from your food. So tyrosine, phenylalanine, rhodiola, they are all found in foods and herbs. So the first rule is to know that good nutrition is key to building brain dopamine and reversing addictive diseases, because some alcoholics are deficient in dopamine, some alcoholics are deficient in other chemicals. We need to apply the entire cascade of health. What I mean by that is that it's not just the nutrients, it can be spices in your diet. There can be cayenne, can rebuild your dopamine levels. There are antioxidants in rosemary and basil that can rebuild your dopamine. You can rebuild your dopamine with estrogen if you're deficient in estrogen. DHEA, which can get rid of all your gut fat by rebuilding adrenaline in your brain. In fact, some people actually get their adrenal glands implanted into their brains to get more dopamine when they have Parkinson's. So DHEA actually raises adrenaline and raises your dopamine levels. There is testosterone. The male losing testosterone is in male menopause, but he's also in brain biochemical pause. Losing dopamine, getting a big belly, and losing his memory. He can't remember where he is. He's forgetful. He loses his sex drive. Basically, sex is really a barometer or a thermometer that rises with your brain health and goes down with your brain's failing. So we know that the entire health of the body is critical to brain aging, which means 21 bioidentical hormones, not the 7 disastrous synthetic hormones that have been sold to the American public, which has been methyl testosterone and DES and cadaver growth hormones and methylated chemicals of all types from the Premarin, et cetera, conjugated estrogens. They've all been a failure. You must have only hormones that are bioidentical to build your dopamine levels up. Now remember, lifestyle also impacts your brain's dopamine. Exercise is a way of resetting your brain chemistry. So if you're not exercising, you can do everything right nutritionally. You could have 12 spices a day. You could learn that teas that bring up your brain dopamine, such as green tea and other teas. You do everything right. You're eating perfectly. You're taking the supplements. You're balancing your hormones. You don't exercise. Or you're filled with emotional tension and you don't know how to love. You will actually muck up your brain's chemistry. So the total picture of building the brain aging is conventional medicines if you're desperate, natural hormones that are falling with age, improving blood flow in all the vascular and osteoporosis and calcium systems throughout the body, from thyroid to inflammation, and a lifestyle that's balanced with a rainbow diet of colored fruits, vegetables, spices, teas, exercise, and a loving life. And you can do this with every core brain chemical.
That's a healthy historical diet. You're talking about grains and legumes and nuts and seeds and fruits and vegetables and herbs, garlic and onions and ginger and walnuts and almonds, things that people have really stopped eating. We're eating hot dogs, hamburgers, French fries, colas, pastries. Well, my goodness, think of that. Think of what Dr. Braman just told us. It's in your control. Now, in the 1970s, there were 2 very important studies that we should pay attention to. There was a Dr. Feingold. He took artificial coloring agents and preservatives out of a group of kids, and their disposition calmed down. They calmed down. There was recently a study that confirmed that, showing that preservatives cause kids to go hyper, right? Well, why is it just kids go hyper? Why not some adults that are chemically sensitive going hyper? How do we know that a person going off, getting rageful, is not also suffering from that? And also there was a Dr. Schoenthaler and there was others who found that when they went in a prison system and they simply got rid of the sugars, got rid of the dairy, and suddenly all the fighting and anger and violence and rage substantially calmed itself down. Now that has been repeated several times. So sugar and dairy, if it's going to cause convicts to overact, why wouldn't it cause a kid that's going to school with that in their system?
You know, they laughed at Dr. Feingold, but it was in the Wall Street Journal just last week that it showed that he was right about food additives. So we know that lead, cadmium, aluminum, food additives, the average American has probably 9 toxic metals, 4 to 6 plastics, and pesticides in them. So you have to fight that with the antioxidant rainbow color of foods to rebuild your brain chemistry. And the other 3 brain chemicals can be rebuilt in similar fashion, each one getting a core nutrient like acetylcholine gets choline and gets rebuilt with the herb huperzine. You can rebuild your serotonin. If you're on Prozac or Paxil or some drug, you might be able to use St. John's wort and tryptophan and melatonin and even electrical devices that can stimulate serotonin production. And if you can't, get off of Xanax or some kind of Valium-like drug, you have the ability to use Gaba agents like inositol. Inositol is the most powerful natural agent that works like a tranquilizer. It is a very useful agent that can cut your anxiety. And the basic rule of brain health is this: when anxiety begins, anxiety leads to blues. Anxiety leads to insomnia. Anxiety leads to the wrong food selection. Anxiety leads to the wrong speech in your relationships. Anxiety leads to not exercising, but sitting down and becoming a spectator in life. So anxiety is the actual first trigger that your brain chemistry is aging and that you're out of balance.
That's terrific. Real quick, what would be the superstars for the brain?
Superstars for the brain, if we do a total brain boost, is tyrosine, the amino acid D-L-phenylalanine, rhodiola, choline, huperzine, inositol, St. John's wort, and some form of tryptophan. When it comes to addiction, there's a new breakthrough. A form of taurine is one of the most amazing alcohol craving reducers ever in the history of medicine. So amino acid was shown to defeat alcoholism possibly better than anything we've ever had. When it's come to bipolar disorders, we now know that bipolar disorders are really like mini seizure disorders. That's why you see dominating medicine, seizure medicines being used, but you can use inositol and you can use forms of gabapentin. Another important principle always to remember is that your head or your brain is always attached to your body. Before you blame yourself, remember that people with brain disorders can have brain chemical imbalances in their brain, but also vascular diseases, inflammation, imbalances in hormones from thyroid to testosterone to estrogen can throw your brain off.
That's terrific. All right, so men, we don't want you suffering from erectile dysfunction, loss of vitality, and also libido. I don't want to have that pot belly, which also, by the way, a pot belly new study shows it increases your risk of prostate enlargement. So let's help our prostates and have a hormone test and also have an inflammation test. C-reactive protein, homocysteine, fibrinogen, triglycerides, and LDL cholesterol, and DHEA. Very important. Women have a hormone panel done. So if you're having your hormone panel done, you know if you're deficient, and then have natural replacement. A lot of people think, well, I can live any way I want. I can eat the hot dogs, hamburgers, I can veg out in front of a television or in front of a computer, and I can live a stressful life. I'll just pop a vitamin. Not true. We've seen many people think that somehow they can shortcut this. You can't. There is no shortcut to good health. You must take your time. You have to first surrender or eliminate those things that are toxic and inflammatory, the hot dogs, the hamburgers, the pizzas, the colas, the coffee, the sugar, the dairy. Get them out. And then you have to bring in live foods, living foods, brown rice and beans and grains and fruits and vegetables and tubers, and then the right nutrients. And of course, stress management is important. I mean, we're not doing stress management. Journal writing, prayer, listening to nice music, meditating, deep breathing, going for a walk, being in nature. We can't forget that. We must make time for that.
I encourage people to engage in rest practices, and these can be any numbers of things, meditative practices, prayer practices, yoga, anything that allows one, even during the waking day, to truly let go into a relaxed state.
I believe the primary cause of fatigue is rooted in lifestyle. Often people are trying to do too much and they're not obeying natural laws such as the need for sleep and the need to nourish the body with proper nutrition. They are subsisting instead on foods that will give them a quick burst of energy, such as sugar and refined carbohydrates. They're drinking too much caffeine, and they're depleting their body's reserves and ending up in a fatigue state.
Dr. Ramdushkin, nice to have you with us. Tell us about how you go about helping people who have food mood disorders.
When someone comes to see me, the first thing I do is, my goal as a doctor is to see their potential to be well. They come in with their list of complaints. I see a lot of people with anxiety, depression, and they're caught up in that. I practice homeopathic medicine, so the model that I show them, I have a nice drawing in my office, is that healing is an interplay between the body, the mind and emotions, and at the core some internal life force, healing energy, often called prana or chi, whatever it is. But the goal is an interplay between all of these things. So I want people to participate. Obviously, it can't be said enough. People who know this still need to hear it. Diet and exercise make a huge difference in how we feel. Not only how we feel, but what it is we prevent. So when someone comes in with anxiety, I need to know what they're eating. If their diets are really awful, a lot of sugar, a lot of processed foods, we need to make a change in that. But there's other things going on for people. Sometimes people have decent diets, do some exercise, but there are other conditions. Post-traumatic stress syndrome will sometimes be a problem. Panic attacks for no apparent reason. The goal here is to find what's the right lifestyle plan, including homeopathic medicine, for that person. Some people come in frustrated, thinking, this is it, there's no hope for me. And that in and of itself can create a difficulty or a potential barrier in them getting well. So first of all, instilling hope, telling them that it is possible for them to be better. Then finding out what were the situations they dealt with or didn't deal with that created that. And the goal is to find what's going to be the right stimulus to their own natural healing energy.
That's good information. And also, the vast majority of people who are overweight in America suffer from depression. And a lot of the people who are working too hard, who have too many responsibilities or things in their life that they cannot control, suffer from panic attacks and anxiety disorders. They're simply afraid of what happens when all the balls they're juggling start to fall down. We live in an extremely tense time, and I'm concerned that we're putting too much into a day, too many responsibilities. I mean, I'm sure even all of you have more on your to-do list than what you can generally get done, right? Well, and just think, getting up in the morning and suddenly, boom, you're into your day. You're checking off everything. At the end of the night, you just collapse fatigued into the bed. We have to focus on quality of life, not simply standard of living. He's suggesting that something as simple and natural and historically valid as homeopathy, based upon the laws of similars, could be very important. So start looking for homeopathic physicians to give you a different perspective.
Can I work with a patient long term and prevent diseases? The old Chinese system of medicine was based on that. When the patient got ill, you actually made less money as a physician than if you kept the patient out of the hospital. Interesting paradigm. Holistic medicine. How can I look at the patient from the perspective of their entire life, psychospiritually, socially, environmentally, nutritionally, physical activity-wise? How can I work with the patient on all these areas to optimize their health? And I want to mention that optimal health is not the presence or absence of disease. A person can get sick, they can break a leg and be optimally healthy if they're well fed, well rested, etc. What optimal health then does, it helps that leg to heal faster. Okay? So another paradigm is holistic medicine. Integrative medicine, starting to use tools, technologies, herbs, homeopathy, different treatments from all over the world, and bring them together to bring the best of everything to the patient.
What role do the pharmaceutical companies, even your physician, have when it comes to sitting down, taking their time and explaining there is a food-mood-body connection? I'm not saying you should not have medications. I'm saying that the medication should come last. And also, what if your depression was really another condition in your body, a viral condition, a heart condition, that wasn't being properly addressed? These individuals, all board-certified physicians, are saying, hold on a second. Let's start with the least invasive, the least toxic. Let's do what's practical and easy. Dr. Irene Grant, you have been able to combine both Eastern and Western medicine. Tell us about how you go about helping people with the very conditions we've been talking about, from bipolar and manic and ADD and obsessions and all forms of dependencies?
I've found Chinese medicine extremely stimulating in terms of widening how to think about these disorders. And it's fascinating that it's probably a 4,000-year-old tradition in managing with acupuncture, and the herbal tradition is at least 2,000 years of very careful collaboration. And Chinese medicine at root is a food medicine. In fact, if you go to Chinatown, the traditional meals are designed to promote health. And the Chinese totally believe in alive food. They want their shrimp almost wiggling on the plate. And they look at the psychological problems and the mood problems as related to the organs and how the organs work with the channels. And they differentiate between a depression that comes from the kidneys or from the lungs. There's a sadness depression. There's an anger depression. There's a whole slew of different depressions. And then with these depressions, there are the therapies that are food-based, and then there's also herbs. For example, with liver problems, which cause also aggression, but also depression, they see that very much as helping to soothe the liver, help tonify it and make it work. And the overlap there, this thing that we call detoxing, and holistic medicine, of really promoting liver health, exercise, as well as lymphatic health. You don't have a healthy liver unless you have a healthy lymphatic system to clean out the toxicity. That this energy that rises up, because liver energy does rise up, is all part of having this organ system and the whole meridian system heal.
So in other words, you're saying that if we are angry, if we're upset, in part is because of our liver?
Absolutely.
All right, so how do you detoxify the liver?
If you want to get away from all the fried foods and the foods full of toxic amines from overcooking and get back into a natural whole vegetable and give the liver a break.
Do you believe that animal proteins like hamburgers and hot dogs can lead to, along with saturated fat, lead to a biochemical predisposition to be angry?
Yes, almost nobody gets an animal that hasn't had steroid hormones or an aggravated life, and we're eating this food that has qi and also chemicals, and the liver gets backed up. And cholestasis in Chinese medicine is really, there's a link between that and migraines and all this agitation. Once you get the liver and the gallbladder working, many psychological problems calm down.
Well, one of the most beneficial of the Chinese herbs is green tea, and within green tea you have theanine, and theanine can calm you down. I mean, look at all the science on theanine today. I'm suggesting to everyone I know, when you really get upset and you're agitated and you're not feeling good about something, calm down with theanine. Now, we used to suggest other things like valerian, but now it's with some amino acids, your whole body kind of goes, okay, let's just mellow out a bit. 200 milligrams theanine, and that came from Chinese.
Well, they also go very much into what they call dragon bone, and they work a lot with minerals, and that's like the oyster shell. And then if someone's really agitated, they calming things down by adding more minerals.
Which minerals?
Calcium's top of the list.
Okay.
I mean, from our biochemistry, a vitamin D deficiency and a calcium deficiency causes high blood pressure all the way up to an anxiety attack, and if you're really out there, you can have a seizure.
What Dr. Grant is suggesting is that in other cultures, in this case the Oriental culture, which he has studied, they're not just looking at you when you get angry as having something out there that made you mad, but also you may have a predisposition based upon how toxic your body is. Now think of it, how do you feel when you're constipated? You don't feel happy, right? And how good do people feel when they're no longer constipated, right? And I've been around the world, in Italy and in Spain and in France and England and Ireland and all over, where they have long programs about cleansing, detoxifying, drinking water, sitting in the mineral baths, having teas and juices. And the one thing everyone will tell you is, my moods are so much better. I don't feel anxious, I don't feel angry. And yet you start eating the hamburgers and hot dogs and french fries, you get overweight, you're constipated, you've got a really toxic liver and lymphatic system's not working, sluggish blood, poor circulation in the brain. Yeah, it makes sense. Then I can understand how a principle of Chinese medicine could impact us. So they're suggesting eating things that are more raw foods, lots of fruits and vegetables, root vegetables that we don't eat a lot. We don't eat rutabaga and kohlrabi and parsnips and turnips like other countries do, and sweet potatoes and yams. So we should eat more of that. And also they have a lot of rice and tofu, but it's a healthier diet. Remember, the Chinese live longer lives than the Americans, and the Japanese have one of the longest lifespans in the world.
The medical model in America does not rely upon health optimization. It relies upon health disease treatment. Thus, we have to go beyond that paradigm to go toward optimizing our whole body function from the ground up. And one major aspect of American life is we are exposed to many, many, many toxins. Over time, these toxins cause major problems of body function. We can reduce our longevity, we can reduce the quality of our life, we can reduce our energy level, we can reduce our health. So first off, we have to understand what are some of the symptoms of detoxification issues. First would be the whole issue of people have to sleep 8, 9, 10 hours at night. Commonly, the longer you have to sleep, the more toxic you are. Although there are many other factors with sleeping, this is certainly a sort of a initial harbinger of problems of toxicity. Next would be the whole issue of brain fog, whereby your memory is a little faulty, your brain functions a little faulty, you're not really quite on track, and commonly there is a detoxification process required by the body as a whole.
When we talk detoxification, we mean getting rid of toxic heavy metals with zinc, selenium getting rid of mercury, zinc getting rid of lead, cadmium. We talk about chelation, washing out toxic metals. We mean N-acetylcysteine, removing toxic organic chemicals, antioxidants such as beta-carotene, vitamin E. There are a lot of nutrients that can remove these toxic chemicals, and you can literally do an internal baptism or mikveh and wash out your insides of a toxic revolution. Now, many people forget just taking a vacation, going to the Caribbean, washing out for a month, you basically are in connection with nature, and that can cleanse you. Sweating, steam, exercise, critical to detoxifying your whole body. Getting lots of water, 8, 12 cups of water, teas, 7 rainbow-colored teas from green to red, all critical to detoxification. So we know that you have to be cleansed out. Sometimes emotional cleansing is important too. Forgiveness is the greatest detoxifier.
We address the heavy metals by doing chelation. Chelation is basically using a medication called EDTA that binds to the metals like lead and mercury, and then you can eliminate them through your kidneys. Now chelation can be used through suppositories, which makes it much more convenient for patients. And in my opinion, every single American is toxic from heavy metals like lead, mercury, and it's leading to neurological degeneration. Therefore, every American should do chelation with EDTA, with DMSA, and certainly other natural compounds that can bind to heavy metals, like garlic and cilantro, which should be part of our diet, but it doesn't replace the need for chelation to get rid of these metals that are causing neurodegeneration.
Dr. Harold Buttram, we have a lot of children in America today who are suffering from problems that we haven't recognized because it is leaky gut syndrome. So they're not getting the nutrients even into the body, and they're suffering from chronic allergies, and those allergies could even be cerebral allergies into the brain.
Yes.
All right, so with diet and lifestyle and nutrients, you're able to help clean up the intestine, lessen or stop leaky gut syndrome, so the nutrients you give them go to the body and rebalance their chemistry so they're no longer as allergic?
Yes.
So that means they have more normal disposition, more normal temperament, more normal moods?
Yes. In my practice, I usually start, the first thing I do with these children is give them a trial, a 3-week trial of dairy-free diet, followed by re-challenge. It would also be desirable to do the same thing with gluten if it's feasible. And it's been my experience, many of these parents have done a lot of research on their own and have already gone through this with their children. And very often just the elimination of dairy brings dramatic improvement in these children.
Have you ever noticed that by rebalancing manganese that is too high in kids with autism frequently and iron that's too low, by reversing the ratio, you can see an improvement?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's something that the average physician's unaware of. Too much manganese, too little iron. And you can get the iron from vegetables.
Millions of children today are on medication for attention deficit and hyperactivity disorders. It's interesting, a number of studies in recent years have shown that lots of these children who are put on these medications actually are sleepy. What happens is that they don't rest well at night. Even if they seem like they're sleeping 8, 10, 12 hours a night, they're often not getting good quality sleep.
In our culture, at least 11 million children are being treated with powerful mood-altering chemicals. And I think it's a disgrace because people are not looking at the lifestyle of the child. They're not looking at the home within which the child is being raised and the habits that the child is being exposed to. So people need to look at the children's diets. For one, children are waking up, they're eating like a prepackaged cereal that's high in high fructose corn syrup, almost devoid of protein, and they're going to school, their blood sugars are spiked way up and very soon afterwards are falling. And the child does not have the blood sugar to literally power the brain. So of course they're going to end up with behavioral and learning disturbances.
I believe that these environmental factors can play a role in schizophrenia, autism, mood disorders like depression and bipolar disorder, addictive behaviors, obsessive compulsive disorders, anxiety, panic disorders, sleep disturbances, and virtually any condition that you can think about which is labeled a psychiatric disorder.
Dr. Asher, tell us about the conditions that you see that you're able to help.
I saw a patient today actually who had bad migraines and he had ringing in his ears. He was overweight, he had a terrible diet, he was a painting contractor, he was exposed to all kinds of environmental toxins. His muscles were chronically tight and he had lots of aches and pains as well as his migraines. And just by changing his diet, putting him on a diet which was low in inflammatory foods, high in good quality nutritional foods, taking him off sugars, taking him off caffeine, he stopped drinking alcohol, putting him on some nutritional supplements which were high in antioxidants, and doing some work on releasing some of his muscle spasms. His migraines went away, as did his ringing in his ear got tremendously diminished. So that's a perfect example of how foods and can have an effect on our health.
What would be some of the nutrients that people who suffer from migraines could benefit from?
Particularly vitamin B2. There's a lot of evidence that taking that 400 milligrams a day actually reduces migraine headaches quite considerably. It's actually as good as many of the migraine prevention drugs. Another point on this is it seems like a large number of patients are deficient in vitamin D3, which seems to have a big impact on inflammation in the body, and it's easy to test for that, and I test for that in almost all of the people that see me, replacing that makes a very big difference in terms of a lot of aches and pains.
Wow, so let's just recap some of what he is suggesting. He's saying that inflammatory agents, now pizzas, hot dogs, hamburgers, French fries, barbecued ribs, the things that people love, the fried chicken, that all creates inflammation. When you heat at a high temperature any animal protein, a byproduct is called heterocyclic amines. Not only are they cancer causing, but they're highly inflammatory. They can get into the joints, causing swelling and pain. He is suggesting that the American diet is highly inflammatory. Now, we all know that cancer, heart disease, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, ulcers, fibromyalgia, these all have something in common: inflammation.
inflammation is due to stress, is due to toxicity, is due to immunological imbalances, is due to endocrine imbalances. So inflammation has to be addressed with lifestyle changes, with nutritional changes, with a change in our orientation to food, to the food chain, to our lives in general. Ultimately, it's not amenable to a drug or pharmacological approach. In fact, the deeper down you go into the causes of disease in general, the less effective medications are and the more effective natural medicine is.
Because it takes time and energy to be healthy, we don't take the time and energy to be healthy. We'd rather sit in front of the television for a few hours than go out for a walk. We would rather grab something quick and easy en route to the next meeting or get food on the table fast for our family, as opposed to taking the time to find and prepare something healthful. It's not a matter of lack of information in our society. I think there's plenty of resources for good information. It's a lack of motivation, a belief structure that exists in our society. I wouldn't quite say laziness, but the lack of energy to be healthy.
We need to adopt a practice of regular detox. I urge my patients to consider a juice cleanse about 4 times a year, ideally. And I feel that you want to use green vegetables for this cleanse. Green vegetables juiced, such as celery, cucumber, and sprouted vegetables such as sunflower seeds and pea shoots, when juiced, will help alkalinize and detoxify the body. So I'll have my patients go through a program where they drink about 8 of these green vegetable juices a day for about 7 days. And I'll also include some raw green soups, so raw kind of blended green vegetables. So the effect of this is that the body will become more alkaline, and the body will not need to spend so much of its energy digesting the food that it's normally receiving in the daily diet, but instead can turn its attention to the mobilization and elimination of toxins.
The inflammation makes you toxic. So fish oil, willow bark, boswellian herb, helpful. For the calcification, you must treat your bone density, otherwise calcium will make you toxic, calcium deposits. In addition to that, you dry up as you get older. You must protect your membranes with choline, lecithin, and lots of fluids. And you must not burn yourself out by overworking.
Regarding food and environmental allergies in children, I'd say once again the inflammatory foods have a very big impact on those conditions, and if one's able to reduce that, it makes a very big difference in terms of toning down the allergies. The other piece is that a lot of children that have chronic drainage from their nose and have a wheat intolerance, and that's easy to test for. And I've seen children who have had surgery on their sinuses, surgery on their adenoids to have these problems corrected, and in fact really what the problem has been at wheat.
I find that when you put people on an allergy-free diet and you get rid of wheat, dairy, artificial sweeteners, colas, caffeine, that you can frequently help people. In other words, clean up the diet. Living foods means that it has not been highly adulterated or processed. Whole grains, legumes, fruits and vegetables and juices, and nuts and seeds, walnuts, almonds, pistachios, pine nuts, sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds. These are the things that children should eat that would help them, because a lot of children are simply having imbalance in their biochemistry, and then they're going to school. The teacher thinks, something's wrong with the brain biochemistry. No, there's something wrong with the home environment of not feeding the kid right. How many kids start the day with sugar or a cola, and then they get in school and they can't sit still? Yeah, their biochemistry is racing. They're suffering from excitotoxic reactions. So you get rid of all the cola, you get rid of the caffeine, you get rid of the refined carbohydrate, and watch a difference. Now let's go over and say hello to Dr. Claudia Cook. How do you help these conditions?
Gary, I would venture that about close to 50% of people who come through my door here in New York City have some complaint of sleep disorder or depression or anxiety. I do my very best to persuade every patient that I see to try a 2-week elimination diet whole foods, no processed foods, no dairy. You can do so much for so many people with so little through such simple interventions.
Have you been able to get people who've been suffering from insomnia to no longer do that and have a good night's sleep?
Some people, merely with dietary intervention, have been able to handle their insomnia and greatly improve their mood.
How about depression?
I incorporate other methods along with diet, mind-body techniques. I also pay a lot of attention to breathing. This is so much the importance of aerobic exercise, because even if you're eating well, if you're not breathing well, you're not metabolizing well. And so 90% of adults do not breathe well in a resting state. Most children, by the time they hit 7 years of age, have locked up their diaphragms. And so helping people to restore diaphragmatic breathing also pays huge dividends.
Have you been able to help people who've had problems with loss of libido?
Yes, I have, Gary. So many of the patients that I see suffer from metabolic syndrome with midline weight gain, elevated triglycerides, and progressive insulin-resistant diabetes, which impairs libido. And so elimination of those processed foods and reduction of the pro-inflammatory foods in the diet can go a long way towards helping people. Magnesium is a cofactor for more than 300 biochemical pathways in the body and a critical nutrient for, a critical mineral for maintenance of those essential neurotransmitter levels along with the B vitamins.
And for the heart as well.
A roll and butter and coffee in the morning for breakfast will cause coronary artery disease. Even if you eliminate the butter, the roll and coffee in the morning will cause heart disease because it will cause this pre-diabetic state. And the pre-diabetic state leads to inflammation, which leads to coronary artery disease.
What's causing your heart to cause a problem? Diabetes causes a problem, if you have excess sugar, it causes glycation, causes plaque buildup, causes atherosclerosis, causes the heart to not beat regularly. If you're toxic, what happens is that you'll have an irregular heartbeat. They'll give you Toprol, they'll try to regulate the heart because you have, your rhythm is off, the electric rhythm is off in your heart. You can change many things. If you have an imbalance in your minerals, your heart will be off. If you have a deficiency of B vitamins, you're going to have congestive heart failure. Didn't know that, did you? You can change so many aspects of heart disease by putting the proper nutrients in. D-ribose, alpha-lipoic acid, coenzyme Q10, and L-carnitine. Voila, you have yourself a new heart.
The first key is to know what type of heart disease. We have enormous breakthroughs today. We can know if it's in your coronary arteries, and we can open them by driving cholesterol down with niacin, herbal colistin, polycosanol. If you have valve problems, it's usually due to blood pressure. And you can lower blood pressure from everything from diet to the rainbow diet of fruits and vegetables, spices, herbs, teas. It's incredible what's out there, from garlic and taurine and fish oils and borage oils. Drive your blood pressure down with the rainbow of spices, from turmeric to cayenne, from rainbow teas, from green tea to tangerine tea, and you can lower your blood pressure and heal heart disease and valve problems.
Something else that I want to talk a little bit about is the importance of intestinal health. I see so many people who suffer consequences of overuse of antibiotics and consequences of poor diet, who have very unbalanced gut flora. And there again, the whole food diet with elimination of processed foods, addition of probiotics can go such a long way towards helping people. And we're talking about brain health, and I want to remind people that the brain is 60% by weight lipid, that is fats. And I want to emphasize the importance of essential fatty acids in the diet. We've spoken about cold water fish, the nuts, the legumes, as you said before, and also that the healthy gut flora are our main source of B vitamins and biotin, which is very important for maintenance of integrity of the lipid membranes which insulate the nerves.
And keep in mind, our intestine is very important. In fact, over 60% of your immune system is located around your intestine. So when you're toxic, and all the American diet today is just a toxic diet, it's like having a toxic reservoir, a toxic dump site right there in that 22 feet. She's suggesting clean up that intestine. High fiber from fruits like blueberries, great, and grains and legumes and nuts and seeds, clean it out. Then reestablish good bacteria. The good bacteria, you can take a teaspoon of acidophilus or bifidus each day and recolonize healthy bacteria, and then a B complex, maybe 25 to 50 milligrams a day of B complex that includes biotin would be helpful as well.
To treat yeast overgrowth, the diet that is very important is especially elimination of sugar and refined carbohydrates. All kinds of artificial sweeteners, preservatives, artificial colorings and flavorings, all of that should be eliminated. Some people will have sensitivity to yeast and yeast-like products should be eliminated because of a cross-reactivity. Because of this yeast overgrowth, you develop antibodies frequently against it, and then you develop antibodies against the food and against your own tissues. So try to eliminate all of those things as far as the diet is concerned.
Now, of course, we all have crises in our lives. We all have issues that we have to deal with, and hopefully we're able to get the people in our lives who can help us in a supportive way, even through counseling. But how often do we think that, gee whiz, I'm feeling depressed, I need a antidepressant, I need a tranquilizer. Even kids as young as 6 months old are now being given tranquilizers. What if we could do something that was natural and non-toxic? What if our depression had nothing to do with what was going on out there, but had something to do with what was going on in here?
One very important, in fact, perhaps the most important overlooked way in which Americans can help themselves heal depression is by looking at sleep and dreams. In fact, losing sleep, insomnia, is the single strongest predictive factor we have for clinical depression. Depression and insomnia are so closely linked in our research findings that many of us today believe that they're inseparable processes. You know, people who chronically lose sleep become depressed. Depressed people typically lose sleep.
The key things that we do to ourselves that may be of harm are the high-fat foods, which give us a sense of transient soothedness or relaxation. But a healthier version of that is to do a meditation, a yoga, or prayer. These will give you the same level of relaxation. A lot of things that we ingest in addition, caffeine, alcohol, for instance, are things that we use to alter our mood states. So dealing with the underlying mood issues is probably the healthier thing. For instance, if you're depressed and drinking caffeine to diminish depression, and caffeine has an adverse effect on the heart, why not do something else that diminishes depression? A good walk in nature, healthy foods. These things diminish depression as opposed to stimulating yourself with caffeine. Sugars is another way that we stimulate ourselves, stimulate ourselves with simple sugars. And then alcohol to sedate us. Why not do a meditation, take a walk, snuggle with somebody? Much healthier for your body, for your heart, for your health, and for your social consciousness than caffeine or alcohol.
One of the primary causes of depression in our culture is stress. We are under so much stress, and stress depletes serotonin. Stress also has a depleting effect on our endocrine system. We find that when people are under chronic stress, their adrenal hormones are depleted, such as cortisol, sometimes also DHEA, testosterone and pregnenolone, and stress can throw off the ovarian hormones in women and can deplete the testicular hormones in men. So all of these hormones are neuroactive and they have effect on the expression of neurotransmitter production in the brain. So when a person's under chronic stress and their adrenal hormones are depleted, Oftentimes, the serotonin will go down, as will the excitatory neurotransmitters that give an alert brain, such as norepinephrine and dopamine. Natural approach to treating depression is to take a look at the hormone balance and rebalance any hormonal imbalances or deficiencies, and then to work directly to feed the brain the precursors that it needs to manufacture the neurotransmitters. For example, I often work with tryptophan or 5-hydroxytryptophan, which is a precursor to serotonin production in the brain.
Dr. Feldman, one of the most common conditions in the United States today is depression. Could you explain to people why you believe that we are so depressed and what we can do to help us?
We have to consider that the cause of the depression may be multifactorial. And the hard part is to test properly and to listen to get the symptoms aligned so you understand what's going on. First off would be thyroid problems. Just because a person gives you the diagnosis of depression doesn't mean your thyroid is good. You may have a low thyroid. TSH elevation may help somewhat. Autoantibodies may help somewhat. Enlargement of the thyroid and neck may help somewhat. But more important would be Barnes metabolic temperature below 98 degrees, a sluggish thyroid. How do we fix the thyroid? Well, it's not that hard. Iodine may be required, a sarcode, homeopathic sarcode, various herbs, even glandular thyroid supplements. Next would be adrenal function. Millions of people out there come to offices of doctors like myself with low adrenal function. And one way to test that would be cortisol in the morning, and that could be done by a saliva or by blood. Next thing would be persons who wake up tired. They tend to have their depression or their energy is lowest in the morning, even though they may have slept 7-8 hours. That's a common signature of the adrenal. How do we get the adrenal back on track? Well, we de-stress. We have pantothenic acid. We have vitamin C. We have, again, homeopathic sarcode. And again, we have actual glandular supplements. The adrenal is a key issue in terms of getting the energy way, way up. Next would be the whole issue of insulin balance. There are millions of people walking around with an imbalanced glucose instability syndrome where their insulin level is way out of kilter. And they go rise, they eat sugar and sugary food. There's a rise in glucose in the blood, but then there's a rapid fall of the glucose in the blood. And this can also give you a depressive story. So we have to go back to the symptoms. Thyroid would be tired all day kind of symptoms, especially later in the day. Adrenal tired in the morning. The glucose instability is erratic, episodic, tired just now and then the persons often figure out, well, I've eaten something, now I feel a little better, but they have that low glycemic issue and it pulls them down. Plus, many people walk around with mixed infections, hidden. Many people walk around with severe immune dysregulation, which is giving them a fall of energy, and it's called a depression incorrectly.
Dr. Feldman, let's just recapitulate some of this, because this is important. For many of you, you may be depressed, according to Dr. Feldman, because you have an underactive thyroid. Now, there's several ways to determine if your depression is due to an underactive thyroid. For example, thinning of the outer eyebrow, a sense of fatigue, gaining weight even though you're not overeating, and of course, mood swings and insomnia. And so Dr. Feldman was suggesting that through natural methods, you could rebalance that hormone level, and lo and behold, I've seen people, I know you've seen people, I'm sure all of you have seen people, when you rebalance the metabolism, they suddenly lose weight, they feel better, they come out of that brain fog or that mood swing, and it's not that difficult. He's also suggesting that unexhausted adrenal glands. We live a very stressful life. Everybody is trying to do too much in too little space. We're over-rushed. We have to slow down to the quality of life. Well, he's suggesting you better have your physician check your adrenal function, because if you've been, like a lot of people, starting your day with caffeine, well, that'll overstimulate adrenaline. He's suggesting something as simple as pantothenic acid, one of the B vitamins, at the appropriate amounts can help balance you out. Plus, you may have viral bacterial infections, which can also imbalance your biochemistry and manifest as depression. Simple things to do, but very practical. Thank you, Dr. Feldman.
We now know depression is caused by brain chemical imbalance that's treated nutritionally, lifestyle factors from not exercising to relationships. Depression is caused by medical illnesses in endocrine organs, in thyroid gland, in many organs throughout the body, and medical illnesses. Here's the good news. Changing your diet, doing nutrition, improving your hormone balance, lifestyle changes, and you can generally treat depression in a natural way.
Dr. Michael Schachter, you've been around a long time in this field as an orthomolecular psychiatrist, one of the few. Tell us about why are we over-medicated?
Well, Gary, I think we're over-medicated in part because of the tremendous financial pressures by the pharmaceutical industries and the fact that the pharmaceutical industries largely affect medical education and affect the physician's thinking. And I think one of the things you need to consider when seeing somebody with a mood disorder is what role the medications, the chronic medications, may play in this. Various antihypertensives may contribute, for example, to low libido, low testosterone, depression, anxiety. Many of the antidepressant drugs are actually will not work unless the neurotransmitters are high enough. And this needs to be evaluated in any patient who you see with any type of psychiatric disorder. And the inflammatory diets tend to put chronic stress on the body and deplete the body of neurotransmitters, which then result in the craving for the very diet that is giving them so much problems. So in order to move them toward a healthier diet, one of the things that you can do simultaneously is to try to correct the neurotransmitters using amino acid precursors and various minerals and so on. These all can be done simultaneously in order to help patients. There is a lot of evidence, for example, in the autistic children and in people with mood disorders that they have problems with methylation. And methylation requires active forms of B12 and folate, and these are nutrients that can be used to try to help psychiatric patients.
Thank you very much. Well, let's just summarize for a moment. You've heard from this very esteemed group of medical doctors that the American diet, as we're now consuming it, is leading us to everything from ADD and depression and insomnia and migraines and brain fatigue and premature aging of the brain and Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. So many conditions that we could actually prevent or reverse if we simply had the courage and hopefully had public leaders or political leaders or celebrities saying, hey, change your diet and your whole mood changes. And then, of course, the exercising, the stress management, the nutrients to rebalance this chemistry. This is a wonderful body that we have. Why don't we treat it with the love and respect that it deserves? Hope that you've enjoyed this and gotten some insights into the food-mood connection. I'm Gary Knoll. Thank you very much for watching.